There it is.
Perfect. Welcome to Content Supply Live, the show where smart marketers stay ahead of the curve. We're breaking down what's trending, what's working, and what's next in the world of content, strategy, and storytelling. Each week, we bring you real time insights, fresh takes from industry pros, and the one of a kind conversations that help you create content that actually drives results. No fluff, no guesswork, just bold, actionable insights that you can use right now. Let's dive in. Last night we had the jaw-dropping Met Gala 2025, and just before that, we wrapped up the Silicon Slopes Marketing Summit in Utah. Two totally different events, but both gave us a masterclass in branding. Today we're going to dive into how culture and strategy collide, from red carpet moments that go viral to the tactic insights driving growth for brands in 2025. So let's first talk about the Met Gala. For me, I feel like the Met Gala is the Super Bowl of fashion marketing. It's not just about what people wear, it's about the story behind the look. I know that there were a lot of celebrities there, like Zendaya, ASAP Rocky, and Rihanna, that came dressed not only to impress, but to represent brand partnerships and cultural statements. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. Um, and how and I'm also interested to hear about how much brand loyalty today is impacted by culture rather than the product itself. So let's kind of talk about that.
Yeah, I can dive in first here. I'll like share. So here's like Vogue, best dressed stars from the night. I think the thing with a lot of these styles, this is coming from a guy who wears a denim jacket and like that wears a hat 8 times out of 10 days. So take that for what it's worth, to be honest. But for in my opinion, half the stuff that's here is not just fashion, but it's just like weird. To be frank, a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing right here on this page is phenomenal. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of here's stuff is really dope in my mind. I did notice a lot of gals wearing suit type motifs, which I thought was interesting. And this is coming from someone who doesn't understand a lot of these things. Like anything that, um, like a lot of these looks just look sweet. The stuff that my wife was showing me, which I think was from like pop culture, I'll go grab some of those that I thought were very, very obscure and odd. But most of the stuff here is just, it's pretty cool. When it comes to how this really affects anything, it's a huge fundraising night. I think they said they raised $30 million last night. A seat at a table is 75K and buying a table is 300K. So a lot of these people aren't paying for them directly, but certain brands are funding them to show up. And so when you talk about the power of celebrity and we're seeing faces we recognize and some people that we don't, like, we got friggin' Chance the Rapper. I was like, he's not Childish Gambino, it's the other guy. But Chance the Rapper here, like, there's so many different types of folks that just because they're associated with a event, it brings not only eyeballs and interest, but obviously we're talking about people who are going to something that is so out of reach for the normal brand, the normal person, and it's that like eventual thing. A lot of people want to be in this ecosystem and around it, and I think it's very fascinating from an investment standpoint that a lot of these luxury brands profit margins are pretty amazing, so they can create these types of events, but it's because they've created such a interest, intrigue, and a feeling behind what a logo, what a when you see Vogue, when you see Gucci, when you see Louis Vuitton, when you see these high level luxury brands, they need to be associated with something that is larger than life, something that is sleek. And I'm sure they have certain other elements. This is coming from someone who is not their target audience in any way, but from a marketing perspective and branding perspective, uh, aligning what that visually feels like and capturing that with the celebrity and the level that they want to. I think it's um, a decent thing to do. And obviously, we're talking about it. I'm sure there's other news channels that are just dissecting the ins and the outs of that. But I really I find it entertaining, and it does kind of give me, no joke, the vibes of the Hunger Games. Like some of the stuff these folks wear are just the weirdest crap. And when you're in the middle of your thoughts here, Kate, I'm gonna grab. I'm see if we can find the weirdest looks from the Met Gala, and then I will roast those. So over to you, Kate.
Awesome. I just had a cough attack. I'm so sorry. I'm back.
She's still
Okay,
alive.
one of
That's
my
great.
favorite I'm still struggling. One of my favorite looks from last night was or one of the brands I guess that like stood out to me the most yesterday was actually Gap. So historically, the Met Gala is really, like you said, Justine, kind of the Super Bowl for all these luxury brands. But I think it's really, I think sometimes it causes like the Met Gala, like you said, Brendan, to feel a little bit like the capital of the Hunger Games, um, and feel a little bit out of touch. So I thought it was really cool that Gap actually styled one of these actresses. I'm pulling up the photo right here, but this is Davine Joy Randolph dressed head to toe in like a Gap denim gown. Um, if you guys want to talk about this, you can.
No, it's interesting. I like the vibes. Cool. There's other ones too that look like their Instagram. I'll share that as well. Had another
Yeah, I do think it's
look.
interesting that like Gap sponsored like a table at the Met Gala because like I mean they're not like a luxury brand. They're not somebody that you would think would be at the Met Gala and like sponsor one of these tables. But I mean, I like the looks. I like them a lot better than some of the other looks that are like made by these super luxury brands, super, super expensive. So,
Right. Is super interesting stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It comes back to like like that's a pretty neat thing to dive into, but obviously like I'm not gonna lie, like this stuff's just whack. Like I like Andre 3000. I'm a big Outcast fan myself. This is fetching just like what are we doing? Are you strapping a piano to your back? Like it's cool, you know, but there's just odd looks here and there. Um like this Goggins one, this was so weird. Like, is it a kilt? It looks like unfinished type look. Am I wrong?
it does. It does. It's like very frayed and yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
pre put together. I don't know. There's just certain things I was like, why is that the I don't know. There's the weirdest stuff that you see sometimes on display. Like these are all great examples where like this is giving me very David Bowie vibes, you know, for Chapel Roan. They're dressing like that. Um, but it's all over the place on the oddity spectrum. But oh man, it's just I don't know. From a branding perspective, worth it for some, maybe not for others. Gap, that's cool that they did that. I had no idea that they would dive into this game. Like, does H&M play in this world at all? I know that's like totally brand inconsistent to their fast fashion and cheap, but like it'd be that kind of equivalent where it's like a household
Mhm.
name playing around in this space. But
Yeah, I'm curious to see if more everyday brands that aren't luxury hop into this. I feel like it would be really cool to kind of spin that narrative on its head, for a lot of these like fast fashion brands if they are constantly being criticized about not being sustainable or not, just wanting to like make a buck at the end of the day. I think it would be cool for them to invest in a piece that is more like art and like a real creative demonstration of their abilities.
very cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, do either of you have any other thoughts on the Met Gala or the branding on that side? Okay, so I know that both of you attended the Silicon Slopes Marketing Summit yesterday. So let's dive into that. What did you learn? I know that there were a lot of keynote speakers, so yeah, let's kind of dive into that.
I can go first before I have another cough attack. But one of my favorite speakers was a woman named Kaylee Smith. She led the breakout room for, or she gave like a speech to all of the B2B marketers that were there. And I, at the end of the session, asked her a question, because she works for, or she's the VP of marketing, I believe, for a company called Job Nimbus, and they are a project management platform for roofers. So one of those jobs that it's like definitely not, a household name,
Just
not
say it's
a household
boring.
product.
Just say it's boring.
Boring, exactly. One of those companies that is like technically you would consider them like a boring product. So one of the questions that I asked her was, how do you approach marketing a quote unquote like boring product? Do you even bother marketing on social media or do you just leave it? Because in my experience, at least in recent years, I think a lot of people have gotten really excited about social media. Like take like a dentist office, for example, or a project marketing platform on roofers. And or I used to work for like uh, a like mold remediation company or a restoration company. And they were super excited about, some of these like older members of the company were excited about social media because they hear that it's a great way to market things. But I have been guilty in the past of thinking, okay, well, not every company needs to market on social media because that might not be where you get the best ROI. Instead, you should just focus on paid ads or building out a website. Sorry. But her answer was so great. Brenden, how about you hop in?
All good. No, you keep taking care of what
I'm
you
going
got to
to
do.
come back to this thought.
No, you're
Leave you
good.
on a cliffhanger.
No, we don't want to push it. I think that's great. So yeah, I'll dive in because that was in a spot. Kate and I were going throughout the day and doing a lot of these like little talking head type interviews in between the sessions that we saw. And so I'll kind of dive into a few of the things that Kate and I were both in on was with this gentleman named, I don't want to screw up his name. Let me look at it real quick. Jaco Vanderkoy. And he is a gentleman that owns a company or he's kind of a consultant for a business that is called Winning by Design. So he's a founder and he's a keynote speaker for them. Usually costs like $20K to show up to events and speak. And he spoke pro bono from what I understand, or he was, willing to come and speak at this, the marketing chapter of Silicon Slopes here in Utah. So his message, he also gave us kind of a pitch deck after for those that came. And I'm going to dive into kind of some of the main concepts he taught that I think are kind of relevant for just revenue in general. And this isn't necessarily like the same, just purely off a marketing standpoint, but in business in general, which all of it's connected, right? We're all thinking if we're making creative, we're making marketing content, it all interweaves with each other. And he introduced, instead of the funnel, to consider of everything as like the bow tie model, which he said in his talk, if I remember, or his talk, or whatever you want to call it, his keynote, is how this all works intertwined and whatnot. Oh man, I just lost the thing. It's similar to it's like the funnel doesn't end. When we think of a traditional marketing funnel, it goes top down, and when it's there through the funnel, that's the end of it. Whereas if you think of it in bow tie, it shows up more like we just started committing to each other, and we'll dive into that. So let me show you this, and then from a perspective of what makes the most sense, I'm just gonna share my whole screen here. All right, went infinite for a sec. So check this out. We've got a traditional marketing funnel. I don't even know if he showed one in this whole mix, but a few things in this bow tie model is you have the mutual commitment, which is the start of the subscription, the start of a commitment in a marketing sense. And that's where you would close a deal. And then when you retain and you expand upon that, then it helps to create, more users and reoccurring revenue so you can actually scale as a business. This is something that we don't really get to dive into that consulting piece with our clients as much, but it still is worth looking into. And it's interesting for when we work with people, we want to create the best service possible. And so he compared to some of his clients like Canva and Cursor, OpenAI, which is pretty sweet, on like the growth sources of what is legit for some of his clients, and the majority of it's retention. And I thought that was really kind of an interesting perspective. This probably applies also to our views of the videos. We're always trying to get new people to watch videos. We're always trying to get new people to be interested in the content we create. When we can create a community and retain them and make people want to come back, then we can really grow something. That type of a concept still applies in so many elements. And most of our marketing dollars go to trying to get new people to look at our stuff. So what is the way that we can tap into the content in the way that we are going about communicating with our audience? Maybe we're feeding the wrong thing. Instead of just constantly pitching new people and trying to expand the new thing, are we delighting the people that are currently with the businesses that we serve? Are we delighting them in the services that we offer? It's hard to sell a product that sucks. I'll be honest. It's not easy. I've been there. I've tried. When I I did summer sales at one point. It's tough. Everybody sells the same thing and they're trying to sell. It's always half off. Like it's BS. Everybody does the same freaking service. He's 3 feet up, 3 feet out, around the base, around the hood, all the crap. So when it comes to having a decent product or service, that's number one. And then how are you delighting those people, making people want to come back? This also applies in a content sense, because if people come and they see one video, they're like, oh, that's sweet, I like that, and then you have nothing else to give them, they're not going to come back. But if they come in, they're interested in that, you have the new hook and they want to stay, then great, you have a consistent viewer always. And if you get more consistent viewers, they stack on each other, and it's just a lot easier to build a following that way. And it doesn't just expand to like a personal brand content. There's the content from a business overall. If it's not something that people want to come back and learn about or watch on a regular basis, going about it the wrong way, and you're spending a lot of dollars on B2B content that's not the most relevant. But that was one of the main things I learned from that guy that I thought was very interesting, um, as well. And also he's just very entertaining guy. I don't know if you had any. He was the main keynote that that I thought of. But what were your thoughts on Jocko's presentation on that side, Kate?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I liked the point that he made about how oftentimes businesses are so focused on, I guess, like the top of what would be the funnel or the left side of the bow tie of, you put all this money into acquiring customers, but really your business would be so much better off if you put that same money into customer retention and even building out a team, like a sales team for just customer retention. And that's really where you get the best quality clients too. So I thought that was interesting because it is a little bit of a backwards approach to traditional marketing.
Yeah, that he showed. I don't know if I don't know if he has the other slide, but he had a slide that was very similar to that first one where everybody was focusing on the left side, um, right here that you had mentioned. Everybody's spending their stuff over here when they should be
Yeah.
spending it. If they spent more
Yeah.
here, makes life easier. The
Yeah.
demand, this thing. So really, really interesting stuff. I like that. I have a lot more stuff we can dive into as well. I don't know how long you guys want to chew on this concept, but there's some really, really interesting stuff that that Bobby Macy shared as well that I'd be down to dive into and talk about and see what your thoughts are. But Justine, from a cold listen, what are your thoughts on this type of a thing? It's kind of a different perspective than most.
Yeah, no, I really like this. I'm glad that both of you were able to attend the marketing summit because I mean now I get to learn from you. I guess like a third party viewer. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
cool ideas.
for sure. Well, let me dive into this stuff from Bobby Macy and see. So he's a media guy that's out of Salt Lake. I'd probably call him a competitor of us. I'm not gonna lie. But he knows a lot of good stuff, and he's a really cool guy. And so when I was in I messaged Kate all my notes from his stuff. So there's a content flywheel. I thought that was really interesting, and he basically showed that like all content, think of it like a spider web, where that's your short form, your blogs, and we've talked about this concept with a lot of people. But all that flywheel builds around the main goal, which is to share your message and to actually acquire customers. And so he had talked about like content's an exercise program, not just a one-time thing. I think that is like one of the most relevant and interesting things that I've ever heard. Go to the gym once, I still have flab, like that's, and I'm really bad at going to the gym sometimes. I get that like all the time now. So it's one of those that if we are going to make content, you're going to commit to, all right, I want to do this YouTube channel. I want to do this Instagram thing. I want to be able to have a podcast. You've got to commit like you're going to work out. Like it's the 6-pack equivalent and the time commitment as it would be if you were going to work out. That is super important because you've got to be able to be seen. It's a long play. And I can't remember if this was something that, I don't think it was something that Bobby shared directly. It might have been the UVU guy. There's a professor. Do you remember the percentage of time spent in brand marketing versus like data driven marketing? Remember that?
I do, and I wrote it down in my notes.
Oh,
And
thank goodness.
the number is, guys, I'm really keeping you on your toes. So, optimal solution between brand marketing, which is like going to brand events and doing things that don't necessarily have like a direct, like tangible ROI. Um, Ideally, you should be putting 60% of your marketing budget into that, and then 40% of your budget should be things with a direct ROI, like digital marketing.
Yeah, I thought that was crazy because
Yeah.
he showed a graph where most brands, like you think like a plumber or an HVAC guy, they're just dumping all the money into stuff that has like a direct back and forth. The problem with that is like it's just a simple you're just generating a transactional relationship with a customer. So if you show the brand, like if you're building this brand and like, oh no, I'm this person you trust and always want to go to, then in the long run, after about, was it 20 to 25 months, that those
Yeah,
where those
20
they
months.
kind of met apex, and then the
Mhm,
brand marketing surpassed effectiveness later on.
mhm.
So kind of an interesting take that it takes a couple years, like 3 years before these brand marketing like really has decent leverage, but it should be 60% of your advertising dollars, which, and that was based on like a couple. I mean, that was he worked for a lot of different types of companies, but I thought that was very relevant as well. And Bobby Macy, like when he was talking about stuff, kind of that similar concept where it has to be relevant content still. Creators are going to create stuff, but does it really matter? And then this is something that applies to anybody who's in the space. Um, that I can kind of shut up after this one because I could talk about a lot of the stuff we learned all day, but was to tie yourself to revenue as much as possible. So as a creative, as marketers, as you know, a a director of marketing, a CMO, if you don't tie yourself to revenue, you're vulnerable. Even though it is important when you talk about these brand investments, that it does tie to revenue, and it may not be seen as like a back and forth like guarantee pay right then, but it pays off in the long run. But you do need to find a way. How do you show your value that you bring and tie yourself to revenue as much as possible? Whether that's, hey, I've upsold this client on these things, or these types of videos are generating more type of business that way because of X, or those types of conversations with bosses, but also with potential clients, are the living, breathing lifeblood of the creative industry. Whether you are the creative industry within your business, or whether you are an agency looking to do that on behalf of businesses like we are. So I don't know, lots of great stuff from Bobby, and I can dive into that. Also use
Yeah.
Loom, but yeah, great stuff there. Anything else you've got, Kate? I've got
I was
maybe
going to
one or two more
finish the
things.
back half of my story.
Yes, dive into that
So,
again.
the answer to how to market a boring company on social media. Well, the first part of the answer to that is that yes, it is possible, and yes, you should invest in marketing and social media. But the more important question to answer isn't if you should, it's how you choose to show up. And often it's going to be in ways that don't involve just posting across all platforms, just super generalized content. You really have to do your market research into how your specific industry shows up and use the social media. So for her company, they target roofers, and their research found that roofers are super active in Facebook groups. Like that's how they interact with Facebook. They don't necessarily use it for like short form content, and so they were able to focus their social strategy on um, reaching out to people in Facebook groups, or putting out free value in Facebook groups so that people grew to trust their brand. And I thought that was super interesting. um, I think it will definitely apply it to our own marketing with content supply and for the people that we help with our services. I think, yeah, you really can't understate the importance of market research. And I think really any money you put into that will be well spent, if it gives you more information as to where your target audience lives, and yeah, just their psychographics and how they show up all places, not just social media. But I thought that was like really my favorite takeaway of the whole conference.
It's really neat. I like that. I've got a couple more ideas too if we want to keep relaying concepts and things that we learned. Do you guys want to keep diving into that more? Feeling good? Not feeling bored out of our freaking mind yet? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So there was another gentleman named RJ who is with Blip Billboards, and he had a great kind of comparison between people who are going. I didn't catch if it was North or South Pole, but one of the poles they were going on this really long trek. I think it was a long time ago. I think over 100 years ago, they're going to go make this trek to go to one of the poles. Very cold, and there's two approaches. There's a guy who's using all these fast methods and trying to use modern tech and just like get up and go, and was really just hustling on the process. And the other guy spent a lot of time with indigenous people that were in that area and learned how to live and how to survive in those areas, and really adopted their customs, and they were like their local the furs that kept their body heat regulated. They figured out how to learn to travel with sleds and dogs rather than like by ship or via like oxen and stuff. That's kind of the typical flow of the other folks. And what ended up happening is the guy that took the time to learn how to live with those locals, and they started their journey and they struggled a lot at first, and so they just seemed like they were getting really far behind. They seemed like really frustrated. They learned a few things that um, They had to go back and restart basically at one point. And then what they found is that those failures and those failures turned into their future success because they learned exactly what would help them get to that next level. And so these two teams that were going, this team that took the time to go through all these processes, wear the local furs, learn how to ride dog sleds, and get to the polls, they beat the other team by 5 weeks actually. So it ended up happening a lot faster, and those failures helped them get there. But then also this other team, they made it there. They saw the message, they turned back, and then everyone else died because they weren't prepared enough because of how cold it was. And so it's kind of an interesting thing that's like there's two sides to a company, to companies. There are ones that grow super freaking fast, but they don't really know what it takes to have that longevity, and they've never been in the trenches, so those die really quick. A lot of startups kind of vibe like that in my experience. But the ones that last, and the businesses that really have that potential, and even marketing departments really have that great long-term growth, are the ones that super struggle at first and then they blow up because they learn from their mistakes. They improve with data, and then it helps them get where they need to go. That's what he was connecting it to in a sense. And it was more of like a motivational speech there too, because I guess what they do is mainly they're the in between for traditional advertising. We have a video with him that I interviewed him. He's a sweet guy. And I know a few people over there at Blip over the years. And the where they sit is basically like meta ads, but for traditional advertising. And so in the sense of where he works with stuff is it's in talking from an advertising perspective, but it still applies in a lot of elements. I thought that was not only profound to learn, but also just really interesting for when we're teaching clients about a content journey. The beginning is sometimes rocky, and you may totally screw up something, and you may post something that half your audience is really pissed off that you even said anything about that. And then that's just part of the learning process to truly grow where you want to go. So that's something RJ thought. I don't know if there's anything else from his. He was one of the other keynote, one of the first guys there. But do you have any notes from him, Kate, that kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, I liked his lesson a lot. I feel like it's interesting as he was talking. I was thinking about a lot of brands who I've seen with a really quick rise to popularity, almost like an overnight boom. And it's so rare that they stay consistent. The first brand that popped in my mind was Stanley, like the Stanley Cups,
I
like
was just
that.
about to say that. I was
Boom.
literally thinking that, like, as you were talking
I
about that. That
know.
is crazy.
Isn't that funny? But then there's so many. I mean, they really don't. I would kill to see like their like actual like sales graph and how things have looked for them the past like 18 months or so. But that is an example of a company who boomed, and maybe they had like the processes in place to sustain it, but I mean, it obviously dropped off, and they weren't able to, from like a branding perspective, keep up the hype when all these competitors were coming in and trying to improve their product for them. So it is interesting. Yeah, I that was another like takeaway from the conference that I think multiple speakers mentioned was get your systems in place now, because now, even while if you're like a scrappy startup company, um you're going to grow. You never really know when that like unexpected growth is going to happen, and you can't just expect that, oh, you will get organized like later on,
No,
because it's going to be harder to, if you don't have those systems in place starting now.
right. And it is interesting that the small and scrappy, the long term, that is really what makes things happen. There's so many of those like VC backed companies from not even that long ago that were just blowing up and huge, and they play one playbook, and they don't innovate, or they die. Um, they just don't stay in the vernacular. And so just being okay with the struggle, and that's part of the game. And that kind of ties into the last thing I saw, which was a presentation by the gentleman who, his name is Ben, and he's the, I think, owner founder of And Collar, which is a
Mhm.
dress shirt company, the blue button up here. And they are a super neat guy. He talked about failure, about what failure means um, for a business in general. He shared some really funny failures and really kind of weird ones as well. And I wonder, did I select those ones to you, Kate? I'm trying to remember if I did.
I don't
I
see
might
them.
not have. Oh, did I message him to myself? Uh, oh man, he had such good stuff. Where the heck? I thought I kept that around here somewhere. Maybe not. But this he had my favorite failures that he talked about were like they hired they have a line of shirts that are just for pilots, which that was interesting, and it's called like Flight, and they hired an influencer to come and be this face of the brand, and it was a guy who's a pilot on The Bachelor. You guys know what I'm talking about? Uh, yeah, so they
Is
paid.
it Pilot Pete?
Pilot.
Yes, they paid for
Yes.
Pilot Pete to be their ambassador. So you're both like, "Oh, I know who Pilot Pete is. I've never heard of this guy before."
No Pilot Pete, baby.
And so
Oh yeah.
they have Pilot Pete do this T-shirt thing for it. They spent a lot of money and got almost nothing for it. They got made like $185, and they spent like tens of thousands of dollars on this
Crazy.
campaign. And it was because who knows who Pilot Pete is? Women.
Yes.
How many
True.
women pilots are there that are going to wear a shirt like that?
Yeah.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Probably the ones who they probably sold all the ones that were on the market and had potential there. So it was just it was a perceived alignment of success, but it was a failure because of where that perceived alignment was. You know, it goes into like, oh, on the surface that makes total sense. Pilot Pete, pilot shirt, great, put it together, let's go. Totally missed because it was not selling to the right people. You know, like so it was kind of an interesting. They talked about that. They also talked about they've paid like 300 grand or some crazy number to have Jimmer Fredette wear one of their suits and make some ads. They've never used it. Just it's just sitting in a folder. So they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on Jimmer to do some stuff for them, and they haven't done anything with the creative. Not even during March Madness. And he's like, just don't spend money on stuff that doesn't matter. You know, there's also a gentleman that was that I really liked that was with Chirp that was co-presenting with him and talked about all the different failures at his at Chirp, which I think is a muscle relaxing type thing, if I understand correctly. And they're finding different ways of how they were doing competitor analyses, and I wonder if I have that picture here. Um, but basically comparing your product against your competitors, he has this big old graph that I think is really sick that we need to do this internally. This just side note, but seeing what features do your competitors have at your same price point, and are they better than yours? Like, do people get more if they spend the same amount with you, or they get less, or are you like, where do you sit in that whole flow? And that whole competitor analysis helped him understand how they're going to make their product better and their service better, but also understand how they're going to market it and position it, because they have to position it in a similar place, because the 5 P's of marketing, which we all learned in school, they still apply, but a lot of marketers don't chew on that very often, even to this day, right? Because you have to market content in the same way. If you're going to make content, are you talking? Is the product you're talking about, is it a decent product? Which is kind of what we help people with, is to make a good product to sell. Or where are you placing it? Is it, you know, oh gosh, I'm like forgetting the 5 P's of marketing now. Product, place, price. Like, are people accessing the content? Do they have to pay for the content? Are they going to just access it for free? And watch it that way? Like, are you giving away too much value for free type thing? Or are you not giving enough value for free? Product plus place. Two more. What are they, guys? Product.
Is people one?
People is one. Yeah. Are you talking to the right people?
Is positioning one?
Positioning is one too. Are you positioning the right types of content? So they still apply in a content sense, but also applies in a marketing sense as well. So they're talking about how sometimes they were marketing it to the totally the completely wrong people, and they're trying to mimic certain brands and copy certain elements from like Allbirds. They liked certain things from Allbirds, which I totally don't remember this brand. They were like a big shoe brand, I think, of some sort, and apply it to their product. Totally didn't work. Totally didn't flow. Totally didn't land with their audience. Big amount of spend. He hopped on WebMD and he put out an ad on WebMD. Spent like 30 grand, 60 grand, zero return on investment, because of all these big pharma companies just curb stomped him on spend. So he learned a lot about like where to position things, where things matter, and those failures helped them to actually know how to be successful in those processes. So lots of really interesting stuff in that one as well, about how failure is actually a positive thing if you can let it be. And then all your failures can also be a success in a different way if you're open to it. So anyway, lots of that was cool. But anything else you had, Kate? That's kind of my main talking points that I feel like were the coolest things to learn. And for me as a person who works operating a content company, I feel like I've got a lot of things that I want to apply and work on, and that I feel excited to share some of these things with not only clients, but it's helped me to kind of reframe where we position ourselves, that to be that consistent strategy partner, that consistent person that anybody can come to, and we can give them all the information and things that they want to hear based on what's most relevant for their businesses. And so, yeah, just super great value that I'm excited to share with lots of clients in the future.
Yeah. I guess we can just end with an invitation and just a reminder to any marketers watching to always, always, always do everything you can to continue your marketing education. There were a couple of people I met at the conference yesterday that said, "Oh yeah, I graduated in marketing like 20 years ago, so that degree is useless." But it is like true that really, I feel like our industry more than others is always changing. And so I think any chance you have to go to a conference or just keeping up to date with trends via your favorite educators or just creators that um, continue to put out like up to date knowledge. I think the more media you consume like that, the better. So yeah, that's our invitation to you guys.
Yep. And if you're in Utah, go to Silicon Slope stuff, and you'll probably see one of us there.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I love that. Thanks for sharing all of your insights and everything. If you're watching this live, then put your questions in the comments. We'll respond to those. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can hear more about these marketing tips and others. And we will talk to you next time. Bye.